In 2018, I worked the night shift as an emergency call dispatcher. After a while, most calls start to sound the same. Arguments, accidents, drunk voices slurring their locations. People panicking over things that turn out to be nothing. You learn to detach. You have to empathy will burn you out fast in that job. But one call never left me. No matter how much time has passed, I remember it with terror and clarity, as if it's still waiting for me to finish listening. It came in at exactly 2:17 a.m., that hour where the night feels unnatural, where silence doesn't feel peaceful but tense, like something is wrong and your body knows it before your mind does. The call connected, but no one spoke. All I could hear was breathing slow, uneven breathing too close to the microphone, like someone was holding the phone against their mouth. I followed protocol and asked for the caller's location. For several seconds, there was nothing. Then a woman whispered, barely loud enough to hear, "I think someone is in my apartment." Her name was Laura, late 20s. She lived alone in an old third-floor apartment building, the kind that always smells faintly of dust and damp carpet. No security cameras, no doorman. The building had a history of tenant complaints, strange noises, footsteps in empty hallways, doors found unlocked in the morning. Nothing that ever led to an arrest, nothing solid enough to investigate, just patterns no one wanted to connect. Laura told me she had woken up because she heard footsteps moving through her living room. Not heavy footsteps, not rushed, careful ones. Like whoever it was knew exactly where everything was and didn't want to disturb it. I asked her if the door had been forced open. She said no. That was when my stomach tightened. She hadn't heard the door open at all. I told her to lock herself in the bathroom and stay on the line with me until officers arrived. She said she was already there. When I asked if she was sure she'd been alone when she went to sleep, she hesitated before answering. "I think so." She said that hesitation scared me more than if she had screamed, because it sounded like doubt, like her memory had already started to slip. As we spoke, she told me the footsteps had started again, slower now. Closer, I asked her to describe the sound. She struggled for words before saying it sounded like someone walking barefoot, but wrong somehow, like the joints bent too far, like the feet didn't land the way feet are supposed to. I almost told her to stop talking, to stay completely silent. But then I heard it through the phone. Another breath. Not hers, deep, patient, curious. I asked her if someone was in the bathroom with her. She whispered no, then lowered her voice even more and said something I still hear when I try to sleep. "They're outside the door," she said, "and they're listening to us." At 2:24 a.m., the call began to glitch. Static crept into the line, followed by a faint clicking noise, rhythmic and deliberate, like something tapping a fingernail against plastic. Then a voice spoke. It wasn't Laura's, it sounded calm, almost amused, like someone observing an experiment. "Why did you call them?" it asked. My hands went cold. I asked Laura who that was. She started crying, saying she hadn't said anything, that her mouth hadn't moved. The clicking grew louder. Then the line went silent. No breathing, no static, just an open connection to nothing, as if the call itself was still listening. Police arrived 4 minutes later. The apartment door was locked from the inside. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no disturbed furniture, no footprints, not even dust displaced on the floor. It looked untouched, as if no one had walked through it at all. Laura was found in the bathroom alive but completely unresponsive. Her eyes were wide open, fixed on the bathroom door. Her mouth was frozen in the shape of a scream that never came out. Doctors later said her vocal cords were undamaged. Her body was healthy. Whatever had happened hadn't left a mark you could see. She never spoke again. Not to police, not to doctors, not to her family. Eventually, she was placed into long-term psychiatric care. When nurses tried to get her to talk, she would shake uncontrollably and cover her ears, as if she could still hear something no one else could. What never made it into the official report was what happened when investigators reviewed the call recording. There were two voices responding to my questions, Laura's voice and another voice that sounded exactly like hers. Same tone, same breathing pattern. The difference was timing. The second voice always answered a fraction of a second before Laura did, as if it already knew what she was going to say. At first, they thought it was an echo or a technical artifact, but the more they analyzed it, the worse it became. The second voice wasn't repeating Laura's words. It was predicting them, answering before she did.
Correcting her when she hesitated, finishing her sentences when she went quiet. I tried to tell myself it was stress, that my mind was filling in gaps. I went back to work. I forced myself into routine until 3 weeks later. During another night shift, the system flagged an incoming call from Laura's apartment. Same number, same address. The line opened, and I heard breathing again. The same breathing. The clicking returned, slow and deliberate. I checked the system while keeping the caller on hold. Laura had been institutionalized. The apartment had been sealed pending review. No one was supposed to be there. Then a voice whispered, "She doesn't live here anymore." I hung up the call. Never appeared in the logs, no recording. No trace had ever happened. When I checked the raw system data, there was nothing, except a timestamp showing my station had been active for 47 seconds without a registered call. After that night, I started digging quietly on my own time. I searched internal databases for similar incidents, calls with unexplained audio, voices that didn't match callers. Breathing with no speaker, what I found made my chest tighten. There were others, dozens, all spread out over years across different cities. Different dispatchers, different callers. But the same details kept appearing: late-night calls, locked rooms, no forced entry, victims found alive but psychologically destroyed, and recordings that contained extra voices no one could identify. One case stood out: a man who called to report someone standing at the foot of his bed. Mimicking his breathing, when police arrived, he was still in bed. Eyes open, unable to move. The recording contained a third voice, whispering the dispatcher's questions before they were asked. Another case involved a woman who called because she could hear herself speaking from another room. She was found alone, but the audio file contained two versions of her voice, one calm, one terrified, talking over each other. The notes always ended the same way: "'cause undetermined psychological episode, no further action." I started having trouble sleeping when I did sleep. I dreamed of phones ringing endlessly unanswered. I dreamed of my own voice speaking without me. I began to notice things while awake too. Pauses in conversations where people responded before I finished talking. A delay in my reflection when I brushed my teeth, just a fraction of a second too slow. One night, my phone rang at home. Unknown number 2:17 a.m. I didn't answer. The voicemail arrived seconds later. It was just breathing. Then my voice, calm and steady, saying my name, answering questions I didn't remember asking. I quit my job shortly after. I moved apartments, changed my number. I tried to convince myself that distance would help, that whatever it was had been tied to the job, to the system, to those calls. But I was wrong. Because this thing doesn't live in buildings, it doesn't need doors. It lives in moments where someone is listening. It exists in the space between a question and an answer. It learns people by hearing them. It studies fear the way a predator studies movement. And once it knows your voice well enough, it doesn't need you anymore. Sometimes late at night, I wake up to the sound of breathing beside my bed. Not loud, not threatening, just patient waiting. And I understand now that calling for help doesn't make you safer, it just tells it where to listen. So if you ever wake up in the middle of the night and hear breathing that isn't yours, don't assume you're imagining it. And don't rush to pick up your phone, because something might already be on the line. And it might already know exactly what you're going to say.